Well, good morning, everyone. I would like to thank you all for joining us for our April Virtual Transferable Skills Seminar. I am William Hardrick. I'm the Senior Manager of College and Career Programs here at the Little Bit Foundation. The Virtual Transferable Skills Seminar is sponsored by Citi. It's a component of our What's Next program here at the Little Bit Foundation. I want to give a couple of shouts out before we get going. I'm going to say a special shout out thank you to Miranda Jones, who's our CEO. She's logged on briefly. Our VP, Miss Erica Driver, and also our other team member, Miss Janetta Alexander. So thank you all for joining with us this morning. I see we have a couple of schools here. So I want to make sure everyone is registering. I make sure I receive the link to register. We're really excited about the presentation today. We had to bring back someone that was a highly recommended, but also highly requested from last year. She did a workshop with us last year, so we had to bring her back this year. So we're going to have today Dr. Antoinette Boyd. She's the Director of Career Success, Professional Development at Maryville University. She has 13 years in the field of employment services and career development. She's a certified associate diversity coach through the Diversity Institute, and she brings a wealth of knowledge, training, and firsthand experience to this passion. So without further ado, I'll introduce to you Dr. Antoinette Boyd. Dr. Boyd.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the invitation to come back. As Mr. Hardrick mentioned, my passion is career development. And so today what I hope to do is provide some information that's going to be helpful to you as you all start to think about the next step in your lives and your careers. So without any more hesitation, I will share my presentation and get started. Okay, can everybody see the screen okay, the presentation? Okay, perfect. Okay, so again, my name is Antoinette Boyd, and today I'm here to talk to you about career planning for success. And so as we get started with that, I know you just heard a little bit about me. I'd love to tell you a little bit more, if that's okay. So I have been to college a couple of different times now. I went and got a bachelor's and a master's from Webster. I got a doctorate from Maryville. I've also worked in corporations, government, and education. In various functions, including management, human resources, workforce, and career development. And my passions are, most importantly, why I'm here with you all today, is I enjoy education, teaching, and learning, career and professional development, and I love connecting people to opportunities and helping them achieve their professional and personal goals. So just as we get started, I know you all are in the classroom, but I'm wondering if anyone would want to share with me what success means to you. When you think about the word success, what comes to mind?
Feel free to unmute or add in the chat.
And if no one has any words that come to mind, that's okay. We can keep going. But what I really want us to think about is, when we think about success, a lot of times things such as money come to mind, or a certain position title, or a certain status and lifestyle. And certainly your career can bring those benefits. But when we think about success, we really want to frame that in the sense of choosing careers that are in alignment with the skills, the talents, and the interests that we have. So naturally, there are things that you all are good at and that you enjoy. And so I want to talk to you all today about how to use those things in order to determine the best career pathway for you.
Dr. Boyd, we got a few things in the chat. We have
perfect. Okay, perfect.
Improvement. We have winning.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, these are great. I believe success is a standard of metric that asserts status and talents that all work together for the benefit. Wow, that's a great observation. So whoever shared that, Janetta, thank you so much. That's a really great observation. So I appreciate you all sharing some of those things that success means to you. This is going to help frame our conversation as we continue. So next, let's talk about, how do most people become successful? So when we think about what success means to us, we heard quite a few things, right? Improvement, having different skill sets that are going to allow you to achieve your goals. But how do we do that? How do most people become successful? Most people become successful through career planning and goal setting. And so that is exactly what we're going to talk about today. Is we're going to walk through, what does career planning look like for you, for where you are currently in your academic careers, and how do you start planning in order to be prepared for the next step so that you can be successful. Okay, so next, let's talk about what is career planning. So career planning is identifying what you're good at. So we talked about that. Maybe you play an athletic sport, or maybe you really appreciate your art class or your music class, or maybe you really like math or science. And so by this point in your academic career, you've probably started to learn the things that you like and the things that you're good at. That's going to be an important part of your career planning. So don't lose that. Make sure that you're always thinking about those things. You want to make sure you're knowing how your skills, talents, and values translate into specific careers. So as we talked about, this is the biggest factor in success. Success is not earning a lot of money. Success is not having a title or a fancy car. Success is using your talents and your experiences in the most valuable way in order to make an impact. And that impact can be in many different areas. So I'm sure all of you have different careers that you're interested in. And so you want to focus on making an impact in those areas rather than making the money. The money will come, I promise you, but focus on making the impact first. It means matching your career goals to your educational needs. So it may require you to get a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, a master's degree, a doctorate, depending on what you want to achieve. You would want to make sure that your educational goals and your career goals are in alignment. And you also want to make good decisions for yourself. So making good decisions is going to be the essence of your success. Every time you're faced with a decision, you want to weigh your options, have as much information as possible, and make sure that you're making the best decisions for yourself each and every time. So now let's talk a little bit more about why career planning is important. So let's look at this example, right? So let's just say we have 100 ninth graders. Out of 100 ninth graders, 65 will graduate from high school, 39 will enter college, 26 will make it through their sophomore year, but only 15 will graduate from college. So if we look at this example of how 100 ninth graders now becomes 15 college graduates, what do we think the difference in those who made it through college and those who didn't? It's because they didn't plan effectively and prepare for their future career. And so that's why we're having this conversation today, because we want to increase that number. And we want everyone here to make it through college and make it to the career goal that they have set for themselves and the things that they're interested in. So that's why planning and preparation are so important. So now let's talk about, how do you get started with career planning? So there's a few things you want to do. You want to make sure you understand what it means to be career ready. So career ready encompasses many things, many factors, many skill sets, and we'll talk about those on the next slide. You want to make sure that you're able to identify your skills and interests so that you can explore career options that align with those things. You want to start building your professional brand, and we'll talk about how you do that. And you want to make sure you create a professional resume, cover letter, and maybe a digital portfolio, such as a LinkedIn page. And we'll talk about how you can do those things through the presentation today. Okay, so now I would like to know if anybody is willing to either unmute or put in the chat, if you could tell me what careers are interesting to you, or maybe 1 or 2 careers of interest that you've considered.
Go ahead, tell them, Jordan. I'm interested in any career in the healthcare field because I feel like any career that has to do with helping people is very important, like nurses and first responders.
Okay, very good. I love that. Thank you for sharing. So that is a really good career path that you shared. And I like what you shared after, because remember, we talked about, it's about aligning with an impact that you can make, something that you enjoy doing, something that you're good at. And so what you said behind that is anything in healthcare because you like to help people, right? And so that's exactly how you want to choose your careers, is by how you can use the skills that you have to make an impact. So thank you for sharing. Looks like we have a couple in the chat. Cosmetology, yes, I think all of us can appreciate that, right? Dental assistant, computer programming. So we've got some really good options here, a wide range of interests and skill sets here that are being highlighted through your career interests. So now that we know some of the interests of who's here today in the Zoom session, let's talk a little bit more about career readiness and how do we start to prepare for that healthcare and computer programming and dental assistant career. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about career readiness. So if you remember a couple of slides back, we talked about career readiness as being essential to your career planning. So in order for you to be career ready, that encompasses many different factors. So you'll see some of those factors on the screen, but just to share a definition of career readiness with you, it is the attainment and demonstration of requisite competencies that broadly prepare graduates for a successful transition into the workplace. So those are going to be things like critical thinking, communication, teamwork, technology, leadership, professionalism, career and self-development, and equity and inclusion. So these are 8 areas that employers have identified as being essential to your success. So it's if you have a job, you want to make sure that you have as many skills in this area, in these areas as possible in order to be successful in that workplace. Now let's talk a little bit about professional branding. So has anyone ever heard of professional branding before? You can just say yes or no if you want to unmute, or if you want to put it in the chat. And if you haven't, then that's okay. We're going to talk about what it means. And so I'm sure that you see some logos and symbols here on the screen that are familiar to you. So we want to just look at a couple of these. So specifically, what do we think about when we think about Apple? How many people have maybe an iPad or an iPhone? And what do you associate with the brand Apple? Does anyone want to share maybe 1 or 2 thoughts that come to mind? Okay, yes. Therapy, good quality. Yes. So very good quality, right? Very good mobile products, right? Tech savvy, right? Innovative. Those are the things we think about when we think about Apple. What about Nike? What do we think about when we think about Nike? Does anybody have any sorts of words or things that come to mind when they think about the brand Nike? Okay, so we think about Jordans. Yes. We think that they're dependable. It's expensive. Yes. We think about shoes, right? Clothing. So there are things that we associate with each of these brands, right? So we look at Starbucks, we associate coffee with that. We look at the Pepsi logo, we associate soda and snacks with that, right? Target, we associate convenience with that. And we also look at McDonald's, which we all know we associate with quick, fast, inexpensive food options, right? And so the point that I'm making here is that each of these brands has things that are associated with it that we know each brand to have, right? The same thing happens with us as people. So when we think about these brands, our brand is also important. So if your picture was on the screen, what might people say about you? And we want those things to all be positive, right? And so that's why we have to focus on professional branding. Professional branding is the process of developing a strategy and actions to guide your brand. So that means everything that you do, your behavior, the way that you interact with people, all of those things are supporting your brand. And so you have to decide what you want your brand to be, and you have to align your behaviors with that specific brand that you hope to achieve. I also want to leave you with a rule, the 7-Eleven rule. I'm not sure if anybody has ever heard of the 7-Eleven rule, but what this means is that in 7 seconds, 11 assumptions are made about you. So if you walk into a room, if you're in the room for 7 seconds, 11 assumptions have already been made about you. And so you have to always be mindful of how your body language, the things that you're saying, how you're interacting with people are impacting your brand. Okay, let's continue with professional branding. So why is it important? Developing your professional brand will help you find new opportunities. It'll help you build a rapport with others. It'll help you network and make connections, which is extremely important when it comes to career and getting employment opportunities. You'll be more personally fulfilled with your life when you're sure that the way that people see you, it aligns with how you see yourself and the image that you want to have. And it'll help you plan for your future career as well. So, does anybody have a favorite brand? You can just unmute or you can put it in the chat. Is there a favorite brand that you have that you think about when you think about you go to a store and you see multiple brands? Is there one that you always buy? Okay, Puma. So somebody said Puma. So William looks like he likes Puma. Someone else said Parda. So there's a couple of different brands here. Nike, and so Jiffy Peanut Butter, Polo, lots of good brands here, right? Some of the ones I like as well. Prada. Okay, so now I see Prada, very high-end brand. Gucci, yeah. So we see some very luxurious brands here in the chat, right? And so when we think about why it is that we choose those brands, it's because the characteristics of those brands align with what we need as people, right? And so if you think about yourself and you want to align with what employers need as far as talent, right? What does your brand say about you? And if an employer, just like you go into the store and you have an option of 5 different types of shoes you can buy, the employer also has options of who they can hire. What does your brand say about you that you're going to be the one that the employer hires? Just as when you go into the store, you choose that specific brand because you know things about that brand that are positive, right? So we want to think about it in that comparison of the same reasons that you choose certain things would be the same reasons that employers would choose you for opportunities, or that you would be admitted to college or selected for other opportunities. And so we always want to make sure that we're maintaining that positive brand alignment with who we are, what our values are, and the reputation and the character that we possess. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about building your brand a little bit more. So how do you start to do that? So we talked about why it's important, right? And what it means. And so the first thing you'd want to do is you'd want to do a self-assessment. So that self-assessment is going to really involve thinking about all of your experiences and activities and all the classes that you might be taking and which classes you like best and which ones you may not like as much, right? Because part of career planning is also realizing what you don't like and what you're not good at and eliminating options, right? Because it's only going to make the ones that are for you more visible and easier to see. So we want to make sure that we do that self-assessment, think about our likes and dislikes. We want to think about important life decisions. So pretty soon you're probably going to be deciding where you're going to go to college. That's a pretty important life decision. And so you want to make sure that you're going to a school where their values are in alignment with your values, but also that you're going to be able to get the degree that you need in order to achieve the career goals that you have for yourself, because that degree is going to become part of your brand. And so if you want to achieve certain things and you want to have a certain brand, got to make sure that the decisions that you're making are in alignment as well. You also want to ask for feedback. So don't be afraid to ask your teachers or your classmates or your coaches to give you feedback on how do they see you as a person, right? And so we want to make sure that if you want to be seen as someone who's kind and respectful, that others do in fact view you in that way. And if they do not, then you can change some of your actions to ensure that they align better with your brand. Consider your unique qualities and special talents. Always be mindful of how you interact with others. And then you want to be clear and concise about your goals. So specifically, you always want to have a SMART goal, and we'll talk about what a SMART goal is later on in the presentation. Always remember too, you don't want to make a bad impression. Bad impressions are really hard to overcome. So always work on making a good first impression by ensuring your actions are in alignment with your positive brand that you're trying to portray. So lastly, in building your brand, you can ask yourself some questions here. Think about, how do you want to be known? What is your brand when you think about that? So when you think about Nike and how Nike's known, right? What did Nike do? Their behaviors, their actions, how they interact with you as the consumer all impacts how they're known. And that impacts that same thing, those same factors for you as well as an individual. So how do you want to be known? And how does your behavior, your actions, and your interactions with others support your brand? What words, concepts, and ideas would people associate with you? And what makes you stand out? And in essence, Jeff Bezos, who's the CEO and founder of Amazon, says your brand is what people say about you when you leave the room. So when you leave the room, are people saying positive or negative things about you? And if one or the other, how does that align with your brand? Okay, so now let's move on and talk a little bit about resumes. So I'm not sure if you can just put it in the chat if you have a professional resume already. If you do not, that's okay. We're going to talk about some helpful tips that will be essential to you building a professional resume. And I'll also have some resources to share with you that'll help you with that. So just, if anybody has a resume or does not have a resume, if you want to share that. So, okay, let's see. It looks like we have some comments in the chat. Okay, none about the resume yet. So let's just go ahead and move on and talk about the professional resume. Whether you have one or not, I said not yet because we will all have one, right? So let's talk about why resumes are important. So when we think about a professional resume, it's an important tool that you use to market yourself to potential employers, colleges, universities, scholarship opportunities, etc. Your resume should highlight your knowledge, skills, education, and talents. You want to make sure that you are really considering some of those experiences that you're engaged in as a student. So you may not have worked before, you may not have a lot of work experience, but your student clubs and organizations, athletics, anything like that is going to be extremely valuable for the resume. And so we want to highlight that on your professional resume. It'll be the first step in connecting to employment opportunities, and it will also be essential for college admissions. So I'm sure many of you want to go to college. You'll need a resume when you apply for college. Your resume should show the reviewer what's unique about you. So we don't want cookie cutter resumes. Everyone's resume is going to be different because we all have unique skills and experiences that we bring to the table, and we want to highlight those effectively on the resume. So the first thing we want to think about with the resume is we always have to have our contact information. So on your resume, you should have your full name, your address. If you should choose to share that information, that's optional, but you do want to have a phone number and a professional email address. So if we think about a professional email address, that professional email address should have your name in it. So you always want to make sure that that professional email address has either your first and last name, first initial, last name, something like that, because whenever you're using an email for a resume, it always needs to be professional. So you see an example here of what your contact information would look like on a resume. So the next thing we're going to talk about with your resume is a professional summary. So you would want to begin your resume with a professional summary. That summary would include 3 to 5 statements that speak to your skills, talents, and qualifications. So here's an example of some that you might have on your resume. You might have enthusiastic and hardworking student. You might have high school scholar and athlete. You might have strong communication and interpersonal skills. You may have that you're driven to succeed and attain future goals, or that you have a strong work ethic and you work well with others as well as independently. And then you can see an example of how you would then take those statements and you would develop a summary statement that you would use to introduce yourself on your professional resume. So I won't read that to you, but just highlight a few. So honor student that displays commitment to academic excellence, maintains a 3.5 GPA, displays excellent communication skills with classmates, teachers, and administrators, hardworking, motivated, participates in student activities, and experiences that support the achievement of future career goals. So that's the kind of summary you would want to have to begin your professional resume. Next, you'd want to have your education listed. So your education should list your school name and location. It should list your grade level. It should list your graduation date, and if you so choose, your grade point average. So you can see an example here, Maryville High School, St. Louis, Missouri. Current grade level is a junior. Graduation date would be May of 2022, and the GPA would be 3.5 out of 4.0. This is how you would want to list your education on your resume. So next we'll talk about your experience. And so this is where we want to make sure we think outside of the box a bit. So as I mentioned, you may or may not have worked before, and that's okay. If you have not had a job before, you still have lots of experience from your classes that you're taking and from your student clubs, organizations, athletics, community service. Any of those things that you may be participating in are very valuable for your professional resume. And so we want to make sure we're thinking outside of the box to include all of those. Summer jobs, part-time jobs, babysitting experience is also valuable. So if you have any of that, you could also include that on your resume. So we see here the example that I'm sharing here on the screen is for student government. So maybe you're involved in student government at your school, and so you could list that as your experience. That would be a great way to show an employer some of the skills and knowledge that you're developing through your high school experience as being a part of student government or being a student government leader. Next, you want to include some key professional skills on your resume. We want to make sure that we differentiate between soft and hard skills. Does anybody know the difference between soft skills and hard skills? And if not, we can talk about that. But does anybody want to take a guess? Okay, and if no one knows, that's okay. We'll talk about it because I want to make sure that you all know the difference between the two. So,
hold on a second.
I'm sorry, did someone have something to share?
Oh, we were talking about soft skills and hard skills, and she unmuted us.
Oh,
But
perfect.
soft
Do you
skills
have
are like
something?
shaking
Okay.
hands and looking at someone in the eye. And then hard skills, because she goes to tech, so she's getting hard skills in like healthcare, right? So
Yes.
like knowing how to take blood pressure. So that's what I was explaining to her what it is. I'm sorry.
No,
I
that's
didn't know you had
perfect. Thank
unmuted
you.
me.
No, thank you so much for sharing. That's perfect. So perfect example of what you just shared. Hard skills are going to be job specific skills. So as you mentioned, for a student who's interested in working in the healthcare field, that's going to be taking vital signs and having good bedside manner, knowing how to take blood pressure, knowing how to administer medications, right? All of those are going to be essential hard skills for someone in the healthcare field. But the soft skills are going to be more characteristics that you possess. So hard skills are job specific skills. Soft skills are characteristics that you possess that don't align with any specific job. They're valuable in any setting. So those are going to be things like communicating professionally, having good leadership skills, working well with a team, working well with diverse individuals, so individuals who may be different than you. So those are going to be some examples of soft skills that those are going to apply anywhere. Those are going to be great for you right now as a student in the classroom, and those are also going to be great for you as you go through college and as you begin your professional careers. The hard skills are going to align more with the jobs that you choose. So we had some interests that were shared earlier, like dental assistant, cosmetology, healthcare, computer programming. So all of those specific skills that you would be learning for those various careers, those are going to be considered hard skills. You would only be learning those because you're interested in that job. The rest of us would not learn those if we're not interested. But all of us, no matter what we're interested in, should always have soft skills that we're demonstrating and maintaining through our interactions with our classmates and our peers at work. So now let's talk about a few resume do's and don'ts. So you want to start by brainstorming. So you might need to think about your experience a little bit. Again, if you haven't worked before, you want to really start pulling out that community service and student experience that you can focus on for your professional resume. Start with an outline. So we just talked about several different sections that you'll need to highlight. Start with an outline of those different sections and then start thinking about what information would go into each section. Develop a draft and have someone proofread it. I'm someone, so I will share my email address with you all at the end. And so if you have questions or if you're really interested in developing a professional resume and you're not sure how to get started, I am happy to help anyone develop a professional resume because it is that important to me that you all develop one. So at the end of the presentation, take down my information and I'm happy to help if that's something that you're interested in doing. And then you want to keep your resume to one page. You want to make sure you keep your formatting simple. And then for some don'ts, you don't want to use I, me, or my on your resume. So don't use any personal pronouns. Don't use resume templates. Don't use any sort of shorthand or internet jargon. So I know we use texting language when we're texting with our friends for shorthand. We don't want to use any sort of language like that on the resume. We want to spell everything out so that it's professional and so that the employer understands the skills and the information that we're sharing. And then also don't forget what's unique about you and make sure that that's highlighted on your resume. So next, let's talk a little bit about professional interviews. So does anybody have an experience with interviewing, whether it would be for a job or a scholarship or anything like that? And is there anything about interviews that have made you nervous before? And if not, we can move on. If you have not had an interview quite yet, then we'll talk about some proactive things that you can do to start planning for when you would have interviews. And so just want to point out that interviews are for things beyond jobs. So when you go to college, you could have an interview for your college admission. You could apply for a scholarship and you could have an interview. And so while we're thinking about in terms of employment here, think about this in terms of you might come across other experiences that you would be interviewing, and it's not necessarily for a job, but it's for some sort of opportunity. And so when we think about professional interviewing, there's a few things we want to do. So we're not just going to go to the interview and show up unprepared, right? We want to take a step back, make sure we're prepared. And so that preparation is going to include a self-assessment. So we need to identify our strengths and opportunities for growth. So again, at this point in your academic careers, you probably know which classes you like more than others, right? You probably know which tasks or responsibilities you like better than others. And that doesn't mean you don't have to do the ones that you don't like, but the ones that you don't like might be a bit more challenging for you. And that's where your opportunities for growth are going to be in getting better at some of the things that don't naturally become easy to you. Your strengths are going to be the things that are naturally easy to you. You're always interested in it. You love going to that specific class, right? So we want to make sure we identify those things before we go into an interview. You want to think about what value you bring. So again, going back to that brand, right? What are some things that are unique about you that you can bring to a workplace or to a team or to an organization that no one else can bring? And I can guarantee you have some things, but that's the importance of the brainstorm and really doing that self-assessment, because they may not be top of mind, but if you take some time to think about it, you will come up with a few things that you can share that are unique and valuable. You want to think about your classwork and your activities. So anything that you're doing at school is all going to be extremely helpful and extremely valuable to your career. If you're interviewing for a company or an institution for a college admission, you want to do some research. So that would be the name of the company or the name of the school. You want to look at some of the information about the history of the company or the school and the growth. And then you want to know the mission, vision, and values, because again, success is aligning your career decisions with your values, your interests, and your strengths. So we want to make sure that we do our research to ensure that the places that we're going to work at or to attend college are going to align with who we are as individuals.
Hey, Dr. Boyd, we had a few comments in the chat.
Okay,
through responses to you. You said what makes me nervous about interviewing, the fact that you do not know the person.
Perfect. Okay.
Ms. Cashman Fast said I was talking to multiple people and also answering questions face to face.
Yes, that is what makes most people nervous, right? Is talking face to face, because right now we have a lot of technology, right? That makes it easier and more comfortable to communicate sometimes without having to communicate in person. And so some of the things we're going to talk about here, like we talked about those strengths and things that you identified before, that's going to help you to be more polished and prepare what you're going to say. And we're going to talk now about your elevator pitch, which is going to help you become less nervous about how you introduce yourself at the beginning of an interview. I can tell you this is one of the most important aspects of your interview, because if you get this right, you have their attention and you will keep it. If you don't introduce yourself in a professional manner, you will not gain their attention and you'll spend the whole interview trying to get it. And so you want to make sure that you practice your elevator pitch or your 30-second summary so that you can sound polished and so that you can introduce yourself in the most professional way and highlight some skills, strengths, and accomplishments that will be valuable to that employer. So the first thing you want to think about is your education and background. So you're currently a student, right? Did you play any sports? Are you on student government? What's your favorite class? Those are things that you want to share at this point in your career that are going to be really valuable, but they're also going to allow the employer to get a better idea of who you are as a person. You want to share any skills, strengths, and accomplishments. So what are some skills that you possess? Are you hardworking? Are you a great communicator? Do you have great leadership skills? What are some of your strengths? So your strength might be in working with others, right? So you might be really good at working with others, working on a team or leading projects. Some of your accomplishments can include honor roll or athletic awards or anything like that that you may have earned as part of your coursework or academics. You also want to talk about what your goals are. So for right now, your goal might be simply to get a part-time job in the summer, or it might be to get an internship, or it might be to participate in a community service project, or it might be to gain a scholarship or admission to a college or university. So that third point in your introduction is going to focus on what your goal is. And so think about what your goal is of why you're interviewing, and you want to share that in your third point. This is going to be very good at responding to questions like, tell me about yourself. So generally, when you go into any interview, the very first question that you're going to be asked is, tell me about yourself. This is going to be the perfect way for you to respond and not go too long, but to also give enough information so that they still have an idea of who you are. So it's called an elevator pitch because it works on the idea that let's just say you got very lucky and you were trapped in the elevator with the CEO and you had 30 seconds to pitch yourself to the CEO. What would you say? And so this 30 to 60 second summary is the perfect way to introduce yourself and pitch yourself for a professional opportunity. And you want to think about what you have to offer in those three areas. And then you want to practice it. You want to practice it in the mirror. You want to write it down. And you want to keep practicing it until you feel comfortable with it because you're introducing yourself. And so you should be very, very comfortable with your 30-second summary or your elevator pitch because all the information is about you. Next, let's talk about some interview questions. And so we talked about, talking to people face to face can be, can make us a bit nervous, right? But if we know what types of questions they're going to ask us and we can prepare for those, we are less likely to be nervous. So we want to think about two different types of questions. We have standard questions. So questions like, tell me about yourself, which we just talked about. We have behavior-based questions. These are predictors of past and future behavior. So these questions are going to ask you to walk through a scenario that you may have experienced in order for that employer to see how you would behave in that specific instance. If you haven't experienced the scenario, you could walk the employer through a hypothetical and say, I haven't experienced that yet, but this is how I would handle the situation. To effectively answer those questions, you want to use what's called the STAR method. And that's going to be situation, task, action, result. So if they say, tell us about a time you had to work with a difficult person, you would talk about the situation or task, the actions you took, and what the result of your actions were. That's how you would effectively answer those questions. You also want to be sure that you ask questions at the end of an interview. So when you're wrapping up, they've asked you a series of 10 to 15 questions. They're going to ask you if you have any questions. So you absolutely always want to have questions that you can ask the employer. And here's an example of some questions you might ask. What are the company's plans for growth? Describe the work environment. What are the expectations or training for new hires? Additionally, you always want to follow up. So at the end of that interview, you want to make sure that you ask for a business card or their contact information because you're going to follow up with a thank you note. So you always want to send a thank you note to each interviewer and thank them for their time in interviewing you. And you can also re-express your interest in the position, and you can recap anything that you shared or share anything that you may have forgotten to share. So reminding them of some skills and qualifications that you possess that would make you valuable for that team and that company. So next, we are getting close to the end here, but I want to show you some things that you can do, right? So we've talked about branding and career planning and how they're really important to success, but how do you start to take action? And so I've listed a few different things you can do here to start taking action. And I would love for everybody to write down one thing that they plan to do to really start planning for their career. So you could take the career interest assessment to learn more about your interest and your skills and what careers would be good options for you. You could do the resume sheet and start putting together information to build a professional resume. You might do a practice interview and start thinking about how you would respond to common interview questions to make sure you're effectively sharing your skills and experiences with employers. You might create a digital portfolio that showcases your academic, athletics, clubs, organizations, and maybe any work experience that you've had to date. Or you may choose to get involved. So you may join a student club or organization, or you might decide to do a community service project. So hopefully everyone sees at least one thing here that they feel that they can do to start taking action towards preparing for your future career goals. So now I just want to take 1 minute and have everybody either think about one thing or write one thing down that you plan to do. So it can be any of the things we talked about, taking the career assessment, working on your resume, doing a mock interview, setting up a LinkedIn or a portfolio to showcase your experiences. Just think about one thing you can do to start focusing on your career goals. And if there's anyone who wants to share the one thing that they're planning to do, please feel free to pop it in the chat or unmute, and we're happy to hear what your plans are. Okay, so I see that Deborah's going to do a mock interview. So that's going to be a great step in preparing for career goals, right? So nothing is going to help you prepare more for your next interview than practicing those common questions and making sure that you're ready. When the employer asks you, you've already practiced, so you know how to respond effectively. That's going to reduce those nerves of answering questions and talking to people face to face. Let's see what else. We have resume building. Great. Another great step toward your professional goals. So really anything that you're looking to do next, you're going to have a professional resume. Most colleges and universities require them for admission. Most jobs require you to share one for employment. So that's going to be a great next step. Plus, it's going to give you a way to really think about all the wonderful things that you're doing as a student that you can highlight on a professional resume. Lastly, I want to show you all how to create a SMART goal. So we talked about all those actions, right? So I gave you a list of action steps, and some people said they're going to create a professional resume. Some are going to do a mock interview. That's a great goal, right? So that's just the goal, but we want to make sure we're developing SMART goals. So how do we take that goal from just being a regular goal to a SMART goal? And what is a SMART goal? A SMART goal is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So that's what SMART stands for. So anytime you're developing a goal, start with the goal, because it's easy to start with just the goal, right? So your goal is you're going to create a professional resume. Great goal to have, but we need to make that a SMART goal. So the SMART goal is going to be, we're going to create a professional resume that showcases the student experiences by the end of the school year, right? That's SMART, that's measurable, it's attainable, it's relevant, and it's time-bound. So you know exactly what you're going to do, and you know the time frame in which you're hoping to achieve that goal, right? So we want to make sure that anytime we're creating a goal, especially when we think about our career and our academic goals, that they're SMART goals. And so you see now the process of taking a regular goal and elevating it to the level of a SMART goal. And lastly, I want to share some websites with you. So we talked about a lot of information today, and I would like for you to really start thinking about your professional careers. I mean, it really is important for you to start planning for that as early as possible and to really know as much as you can and gather as much information as you can to make informed decisions. And so here's some resources to help you research colleges and universities, to research career options, labor market information so that you can see what careers are growing and in demand. And then there's a whole host of career resources on the Missouri Connections website that are available to high school students. And so you can check out those resources as well. And then finally, I would like to share my contact information with you. So if you have questions for me after today, you can email me at aboyd2@maryville.edu. As I mentioned, if you are wanting to develop a professional resume, you can email me and I would be happy to meet with you or help you with your professional resume, because it is extremely important to me that you all begin and take that step to your professional careers. And it's going to be so important for your success. And so I'm willing to, put as much time in as it takes to help you do that, because it's important to me that you all plan for your careers and that you achieve career success. And so with that, I have gone through all of the information, but I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Feel free to unmute or add something in the chat if you have a question or a comment. Okay, seeing none. Dr. Boyd, can you keep your information up there for just a few more minutes, just in case they want to copy it down. I see Ms. Branch come back over to the computer. So I want to thank you, Dr. Boyd, for the presentation. Thank you for the information. My coworkers shot me an email a text message more so saying this is also important for us in the professional workplace now. The
Yes.
information is very much appreciated. Is very useful as a professional. We got a couple of comments. Here we go. Thank you, Dr. Boyd. I want to say Miss Boyd.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Ms. T just said thank you. Ms. Branch says thank you. Great information. So
thank you.
This also will be available.
Thank you, Ms. Boyd.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
That's our CEO, Dr. Boyd. That's Miranda Jones.
It
Good
was
morning.
awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Jones. So were Miranda.
Yeah.
So this video will be up on our YouTube page tomorrow. By tomorrow, as you go to the Little Bit Foundation on YouTube, you can actually watch this video and all our previous virtual transferable skills seminar videos also. So once again, I want to thank Citi as our sponsor for all of our virtual transferable skills seminars. And I want to thank you for your time and for your effort. If you have any questions, reach out to myself, your teacher, or Dr. Boyd if you have a question pertaining to your resume or just career questions, because this is kind of what she does. And she's really excited to help students and really engage with students also. Lastly, I want to talk about the registration link. Thank you all. Thankful to everyone that did register this morning. Our winner of the raffle for today is from Hancock Place High School, and that is Amar Iriskic. I'm saying that last name incorrectly. Amar Iriskic. So Ms. Branch, I believe you are from Hancock Place. Somebody give Ms. Branch, she's talking to students. So Amar, you have won the raffle for today. And so I want to thank you all for participating. Also, I will not leave out our Chief Development Officer, Miss Michelle Abel. She's on here also. So thank you, Michelle, for coming in. She got here a while ago, so that's actually why they oversaw you, because you've been here pretty much the whole presentation. But thank you, Michelle, for coming in, and she helps out a whole lot in organizing these events and also organizing the funding behind all these pieces. Thank you so much, Michelle, for your assistance, just for popping in today.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Boyd. It was awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, well, thank you all. You all have an amazing day. I see we're transitioning from classes. Have an amazing day, Ms. Branch. Amar Iriskic. Is that how I say his last name?
Yes.
He won the attendance raffle. You will see me.
Amar, you won the attendance raffle.
We'll see you by the end of the week. I'll bring something by for you, okay?
Okay, Dr. Boyd, do you would you be willing to come to our school and speak?